If you've ever found yourself saying, I don't know why I keep ending up in relationships like this, you're not alone. I hear that so often from women. They want a different kind of relationship, but they can't seem to find one. Or they use a phrase that I hadn't heard before I started doing this work with women, but I absolutely understood when I did. They say, I have a bad picker. And I get it because I experienced that myself. But here's what I actually believe. I don't think you have a bad picker. I think the exact opposite is true, actually. It's working just fine. It's just not picking what you want it to. You think your picker is looking for a healthy relationship, but it's actually looking for something that feels familiar. And those are not the same thing. I really do think you want to have a healthy relationship, but if that's not what you grew up around, if that's not what you learned love looks like, it's harder to find and stay in than you think. And that's what I want to talk about today. I'm Karyn. I'm a relationship coach, and I work with women who are unhappy in their relationships and don't know what comes next. So let's get into all of this. Here's what's really going on underneath all of this. One of the biggest misconceptions I see is that people believe that they're looking for a relationship that feels safe and is healthy. In reality, most of us are actually going to feel most comfortable or are looking for, without realizing it, a relationship that feels familiar. And they aren't the same thing. Here's why. If you grew up in a home where love felt unpredictable, where you had to earn approval, where you learned to keep the peace, to take care of everyone else's emotions, your nervous system learned that those experiences were normal. Not healthy, not enjoyable, just the way things were and what you could expect. And this can happen in a lot of different ways. But a couple that I see really commonly are having a parent who's dealing with active addiction, alcohol or drug, or an untreated mental health issue. And the common thread in all of those is the unpredictability. You'd walk into a room and have to figure out what was going on before you could know how to respond. And after a while, your nervous system just learns, okay, this is normal. This is how I do it. I know what to do here. I know what to expect. And because of that, even though it wasn't your fault or good for you, it felt familiar because your nervous system isn't asking, is this relationship good for me? It's asking, have I been here before? And if the answer is yes, there's this strange sense of recognition. It feels like home in a way, even if home was not emotionally safe. That's why people are so often confused by their own choices. And they'll say, I don't know why I was so attracted to him. And I understand. He felt familiar. That doesn't mean he was the right person. It just means something about the relationship matched a pattern your nervous system already knew. And here's the other part of the emotionally unavailable thing that I think is really important. It's not just about falling for the bad guy. What we're really doing is falling for the hope that if we can make this person love us, see us, value us, if we can be the one who finally gets through to them, then that's a way of healing an internal wound that we've been carrying around for a really long time. You're not consciously thinking about that. It's just what's happening underneath without you even realizing it. And this is where I think a lot of relationship advice really misses the mark because people will say, oh, well, you want to choose someone who treats you well. And of course you do. And of course you should. But if healthy love feels unfamiliar, then choosing that person isn't always as easy as it sounds. Sometimes healthy feels boring. It can feel slow. It can feel almost uncomfortable. And you find yourself thinking, he's just not my type. Not because anything is wrong with the relationship, but because your nervous system isn't getting the emotional intensity it's learned to associate with love. It might sound like, he's really nice to me, but I don't know if I feel a spark. And honestly, I know I've said those words myself because I lived in this exact pattern for a really long time. And when you start noticing that or you hear those thoughts in your head, that's really worth paying attention to. Not because the relationship is wrong, but because we have to ask what that word spark actually means. For some people, that spark is chemistry. For others, it's anxiety. It's wondering whether he'll text back. It's trying to figure out what mood he's in. It's working a little harder to earn his attention. That's not connection. That's actually activation. And there's a big difference. This is also one of the reasons it can feel so uncomfortable to try to do something different. Let's say you are a people pleaser and you have spent years trying to make sure everybody else is happy and everything is good and there's no tension and you're very accommodating to other people's needs. And then you meet someone who wants to know what you think. What do you want? What do you enjoy? And doesn't expect you to be accommodating all of his needs or all of his wants and making sure everything's okay for him. Most people would assume you would feel relief in this situation. And sometimes maybe you do, but sometimes you might feel very unsettled instead. You can find yourself wondering whether something is missing or what's wrong with this guy, or even uncomfortable because you don't really know what you want or need because you've spent so much time just figuring out everybody else's wants and needs. So nothing is necessarily missing, and it could actually be a really good relationship, but what you're used to is not there, and you don't know how to operate in this kind of a relationship. And that unfamiliarity can feel very uncomfortable before it starts to feel very peaceful. People expect a healthy relationship to immediately feel amazing. That's not always how it works. Sometimes it feels really quiet and steady and uneventful. And if you've spent years on an emotional roller coaster, calm can feel strangely suspicious. You start looking for the catch. You're waiting for the other shoe to drop. You wonder if you're settling because you're not feeling those really big highs or those really low lows. So it makes you wonder if there's enough chemistry. But maybe what you actually don't have is chaos. And again, that's very different. One of the biggest shifts I see in women who are doing this work is that they stop chasing the intensity and start really valuing that boring consistency. And that doesn't mean that relationships are actually boring. It means they become predictable in the best way possible. You know your partner is going to listen. You know they'll repair after a disagreement. You know you can bring up something difficult without wondering if it's going to turn into a 3-day argument or a week of the silent treatment. That kind of consistency is what creates safety, and safety is what actually allows real intimacy to grow. Now, the tricky part is that discomfort by itself doesn't tell you very much. Sometimes discomfort is your intuition trying to tell you something isn't right, and other times it's just what growth feels like. And learning to tell the difference is one of the most important things that you can develop in yourself if you've struggled with relationship patterns like this before. So, how do you know which one you're experiencing? Here's a few questions you can ask yourself. When you're with this person, do you feel like you're becoming more of yourself or less of yourself? Can you disagree without feeling like the relationship is in danger? Do you feel accepted for who you are, or do you feel like you have to adjust yourself to keep him happy or chase him down to even figure out where you stand? Because here's what I've noticed over the years. Healthy relationships don't require you to disappear. You don't have to constantly monitor someone else's mood before deciding whether it's okay to express your own. You don't have to rehearse every conversation in your head before bringing up something that's bothering you. And you don't have to earn kindness by being endlessly accommodating. Familiar and safe are not the same thing, but with the right work, safe can start to feel like home too. Safe can be the new norm that you expect from your relationships. And that's what this is all about. If this is landing for you, if you heard a version of yourself in any of this, I just want you to know this is absolutely something that you can change. It doesn't mean that you're broken or that something went wrong with you. It means you learned what you learned, and now you get to learn something different. And that is completely possible. If you want to go deeper on all of this, the patterns, where they come from, what it actually takes to start showing up differently in your relationships, I want you to check out my free masterclass. The link is below. And if you're at a point where you actually want to talk to someone about your specific situation, figure out what all this looks like for you personally and what your next steps can be, book a free call with me. We'll have a real conversation about where you are and how I can help. The link is in the description. This is totally worth understanding and worth figuring out for yourself. I hope this was helpful for you today, and I will see you in the next video.